Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for turning us up and turning us on day 3 of SEC Media Days. Joining me, as he does every single year, is the commissioner of the SEC, Mr. Greg Sankey. Some would say the most powerful man in college athletics. Commissioner, NIL has been a big topic this week. Auburn has taken a more cautious approach to NIL Go and the clearinghouse. What is the conference's direction? How are you communicating with the coaches, with the athletic directors, with the institutions about how to abide by the rules but not lose a competitive advantage the SEC has enjoyed for so long?
Well, our responsibility is to implement the terms of a settlement. That settlement was approved in mid-June. Leading into the moment where the court made that decision, we've had innumerable video conferences and conference calls talking about the contents of settlement. Part of the implementation is developing a system and having the people involved to oversee that system. But you can't do that until you actually have a settlement in place. That actually was onboarded 2 weeks ago. What's difficult is that the court's not consulting about recruiting calendars, who's making decisions. And so we've been active as a league in educating. We'll continue to be active. We're actually adding some communication points and video conferences from an educational standpoint. We have some leadership for what's called the College Sports Commission, which will oversee the settlement terms. NIL Go has a lot coming in, and some of these first-time decisions set precedent. You actually saw the plaintiff's attorneys involved in this settlement issue a letter and send it out to the media where they disagreed with some decisions, so we have to work through those. All of which to say there's a lot of complexities. We want schools to be prepared. We want to compete. We want to have some equity in that competition as well. I think that's the expectation. And remember, there are two components. There's a revenue share component that can now be paid directly by an institution, and then there's the effort to create real, meaningful, real business purpose, kind of range of compensation, fair market value, third-party name, image, and likeness activity. A bit of that is putting the toothpaste back in the tube, candidly.
What you just talked about the difference between rev share and the real market opportunities that athletes have, whether it be through a collective or just some other business in the community or a big corporation, seems to be a sticking point or a point of contention that is going to mount some legal challenges from some schools to say, hey, do these collectives, do their deals count towards our cap? Should they count towards our cap? Or when the NIL goes through step 2 of what they call payee association, and they say, okay, you have this business in the community, and though they're not communicating with the university, this is a lifetime donator in excess of $50K. Does their deal count towards your cap as a booster? How are you sorting all this out?
Let's go back to the fundamentals. So probably 2-3 years ago, maybe even last year when we visited, the word guardrails was often used. Like, we need guardrails around this name, image, and likeness activity. You would hear coaches talk about, we need some guardrails in this. So guess what? We have guardrails. Those guardrails that people asked for years now exist. When you step outside those guardrails, there's accountability. Otherwise, there's no guardrails. If you operate within the guardrails, and there's a level of clarity that's been provided on how that will be defined, you're going to be fine. That threshold is where the pressure points are. Will people litigate? They may. Will people complain? I think that is certain. The fundamental question is, do we want any regulations around the economic benefits provided to student athletes? Is there any structure that's actually desired? That's a question that we ask repeatedly in meetings. And every time we ask the question, we're told, yes, we need a structure. We need definition. Well, we have that now. The real question is, will people operate within that? And then the next question is, when they're held accountable, what will take place? Now, remember, in the settlement, this is not just a yes or no and you run to court. There's an arbitration process built in for the first time where, and that's part of the expectation that's been established. So remember, we want guardrails. Okay, we have guardrails. Hey, we need a process in place to test whether those guardrails are being applied appropriately. That's been built in. And it's not going to happen overnight. We're taking a decades-old system of operating in college athletics under scholarships and really strict prohibitions and moving that. Understand there'll be frustrations, but if we want guardrails, you're going to have to deal with some of those frustrations as it's onboarded.
Speaking of frustrations, is it frustrating for you that everyone asked for this structure and these guardrails, and then they're immediately preparing to mount legal challenges based on precedents that they previously set and how they operate?
Highly frustrating. I'd go beyond just frustrating. Yeah, it's highly frustrating because none of this has been done without a lot of conversation. And that's where I go back to repeatedly asking, look, if we don't want a system with a structure, if we don't want the guardrails that were asked for, and that's not my phrase, that's the one that was used to describe the desire. If we don't want that, just say so. Then the complaints can stop. People will spend into oblivion in a lot of ways. You'll shift the value structure around college athletics. I think what's encouraging is even the coaches don't say that. And the recognition that young people are in college for a short period of time. It is a time that is meant to prepare them for life, not just to define their life. Those values still exist.
A great conversation as always, one I know that will continue on into the season. Any institution you're more frustrated with than the other on this subject?
I love them all. There are moments of frustration with each. I was asked one time at the Birmingham Quarterback Club, like, what's the perfect, this is when we were expanding from 14 to 16, what's the perfect number of conference members? And I hadn't prepared for that question. And I thought for just a moment, and I said 1. And there's like a murmur in the room. And I said, because when you're at 1, you can address all of their concerns, right? As soon as you go to 2, then you're going to at some point have disagreement. And everything beyond 2 is just a factor of how much disagreement.
Thank you for joining me as always every year, providing some clarification around NIL and where the conference stands. We'll reach out later to get some more clarification, I'm sure, on how that process is going. Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express powered by the War Report. This segment is brought to you by friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. And our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code TWR for 15% off your weights and code Get Your Weight Up for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Golden's Cast Iron. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. We'll be back with more great SEC Media Days coverage later today on the Auburn Express. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.